The following podcast is a presentation of This Is Infamous. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, episode number 3 to be perfectly precise. I am your host, as always, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at joeblow.com, and this is Infamous. And what we like to do here on the show, well, it's not hard to figure it out. We like to talk about wrestling in an intelligent fashion. Take the happenings that are going on in the industry and apply logic and reason to the dialogue. No fanboy speak, in order to try and put what's going on into context, into perspective, so that mass hysteria isn't going on with the Smarks, who I got to take issue with a little bit later in the show. But a lot going on this week as I'm on location in New Jersey. Been managing to get caught up on everything that has been taking place within the world of professional wrestling. As we head towards Money in the Bank in WWE, as we head away from NXT TakeOver The End down in NXT. So a lot of things to discuss. Don't want to waste too much time. Let's get right into everything that has taken place. Now I want to start the show, I guess, sort of on a sad note. Number one, I cannot really put into words both the anger and sadness that I feel for everything that has been going on in Orlando the past few days. As everyone who listens to the show know, I am based out of Florida. Orlando is a place that I frequent quite often, have a lot of friends in Orlando, have family in Orlando, and truly unfortunate events have been taking place there, whether it was the murder of the voice singer, whether it was the horrible tragedy that took place at Paul's nightclub, now also what's going on in Walt Disney World with a 2-year-old, a bad week for a great town, a great city that I have nothing but love for, and a great wrestling place with NXT based out of there, with TNA working a lot out of there, with WWE frequent there quite a bit, and having a base of operations there. So before we do get started, I did just want to express my sympathy towards that entire area. Who are, once again, I know a great deal of people. I'm sure they're all dealing with everything that's been going on in their own way, and just to send love to them, as many others have expressed in the passing days, that we are constantly thinking about you. We hope that you remain strong, and we are there with you in spirit to try and work through this emotional and an incredibly difficult time. So much love to my people in Orlando. It's been a rough few days, and we're going to get through this. We always do, and this one will be no different. It just sucks that these things always happen, and hopefully we can maybe take certain steps in the future to preventing a number of them from being repetitive once again. While I am also talking about sad notes here to start off the show, I do want to also talk about the passing of Chris Warren, who died very suddenly at the age of 49. Now, Chris Warren is a name that probably, off the top of your head, you wouldn't recognize. Who the hell is Chris Warren? Why does Chris Warren mean anything to me? And why are you bringing it up on a wrestling show? Chris Warren is an important figure in the history of professional wrestling, especially someone like me who grew up through the rock and wrestling era of the 80s with Hulkamania, and then sort of had my formative years as a teenager in the 90s, in the early 2000s, as part of the Attitude Era, as well as the Monday Night Wars. Chris Warren was the lead singer of the DX band, which is, of course, responsible for the DX theme song, Break It Down. That theme song, I was going to do something at some point, too, on a future show. We just haven't had a chance to really hammer out the list. But the DX theme song is is definitely in the top 10 theme songs ever created in the history of professional wrestling. Until I really start stacking them up, I would say that Break It Down, the DX theme song, arguably has a spot in the top 5. Could be as high as the top 3. And I know that there are some that would argue that it is the greatest professional wrestling theme song ever made. So, my condolences go out to Chris Warren's family, his friends, anyone who may have known him. My condolences go out to fans of D-Generation X, and in particular that song. That is one that has stood the test of time and is among the all-time greats. So, sad news once again to hear about the passing of Chris Warren, who in one way or another made an indelible mark upon the history of professional wrestling. Okay, with that said, we're not gonna be sad the whole show. There's lots of other things to talk about throughout this program, this podcast, and where I really do want to start is with NXT TakeOver The End, or The End is the Beginning, or whatever the hell they finally decided to call this thing. I have made it a point in the past to try and make it a trip, a pilgrimage, up to Orlando, to Full Sail University, to attend NXT TakeOver events when I can. Now, to my discredit, I've only been able to make it up there for one that conveniently worked into my schedule. Being married, having kids, tapings being on a Wednesday night, 3 hours away, 2.5 to be more specific. It's tough to get up there freely when I want to, anytime. So with this, having it to travel with 2 weddings on tap, I could have gone up and made the trip for TakeOver The End, and then had to haul ass back for like a 6 o'clock in the morning flight, but I didn't. Instead, I chose to watch it on the WWE Network. I chose to watch it once I finally settled in on my travels and get caught up that way. Now, the thing with this particular show is, on paper, you could look at it and say, this has the potential to surprise. In the weeks leading up to the show, knowing how far in advance they had done some of these tapings, I didn't feel that the build for the card was as strong as has been in the past. A lot of stuff was done in post. A lot of stuff was done with promos and vignettes. Very little in-ring interaction. When you're talking about Samoa Joe and Finn Balor, a lot of that stuff had been done through social media, with the title change happening in Lowell, Massachusetts at a house show. So I thought, with the programming that they had taped on a weekly basis, that the build towards TakeOver The End was not nearly as strong as had been in the past. American Alpha versus the Revival sort of came together, mostly capitalizing on the heat that they generated from TakeOver Dallas. Nakamura versus Austin Aries really just felt like it was thrown together. Even the debut of Andrade Cien Almas seemed to sort of be thrown against the wall very last minute. So I didn't feel going in the emotional pull that a TakeOver in the past has sort of taken hold over me. With that said, I would be irresponsible to say that I did not enjoy or get into the card that NXT put forth with TakeOver the End. These cards are always top-notch. Now, the problem that they typically run into, and it's a problem that they ran into in Dallas the last time, which I was in attendance for, is that there is so much good stuff on the card that when they hit a real high point early on, it is extremely difficult for what follows to hit those high points. So you could watch something that is great, and if it's followed by something, even if it's pretty good, it feels sort of like a letdown, sort of like a disappointment. It's really impossible to maintain that high point across 2 hours. You just can't stay up that much as a fan or as a viewer. It's impossible. Not impossible. Highly unlikely. Let's put it that way. For a fan to stay up that much because you're just spent. So even if you see something that is truly amazing, truly fantastic, if the next match doesn't stay with that plateau, which is a hard thing to do, you're going to come down a little bit. And I remember feeling that watching TakeOver Dallas, and I did feel a little bit that way during TakeOver the End. Now, that does not mean that the card wasn't stellar from top to bottom. It's just the card peaked very early on, which made it very difficult to keep that momentum going, to keep that pace. You know, it's hard to run 4-minute miles throughout a whole marathon. It's just hard to maintain that pace. But from what I saw, which was all of the show, lots of good stuff for the NXT brand to be excited about at a time where they are transitioning. Talking about a lot of call-ups going up to the main roster. Whether it's Big Kaz and Enzo, or Sami Zayn, or Dana Brooke and Emma, or the Vaudevillains, they're in a transitional period right now, and that's still going to take hold as they figure out who is going where during future roster call-ups, which are coming in future weeks, to fill out the brand split, to fill out the brand extension, to get a full solid roster on Raw and a full solid roster on SmackDown. That's why you have sort of a revision of the tag team division with the Mighty Don't Kneel, TM61 being called up, as well as some other tag teams trying to take hold. That's why you're seeing Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax really assert themselves more into the women's division, because they need to maintain the strength of the NXT brand, even as it's gutted in a number of ways for the benefits of Raw and SmackDown. There's lots of talent in developmental. Lots of talent to keep NXT going strong, period. And while talent is cycled up, there will be talent cycled through developmental and put on NXT television. Which is why somebody like Bobby Roode coming in or Eric Young coming in is exciting, because it maintains a top tier of talent for the NXT brand. It's also exciting to have more talent debut. Talent that has sort of been in the NXT machine for a little bit and is now finally getting on TV. Now, there are people who have been around the indies, who have been around the world traveling, who are now just finally getting their footing here. And the first would be Andrade Cien Almas, who made his debut at NXT TakeOver The End, kicking off the show versus Ty Dillinger, the Perfect 10, a guy who doesn't nearly get enough respect from people outside of Full Sail University, because he's a great worker, and there's a reason why he's put in matches with guys like Andrade Almas or Shinsuke Nakamura when he first was introduced into NXT. It's because he is a dude who helps his opponents look good, and that helps establish them in the NXT universe, in the pecking order. Now, I had seen Andrade Almas during a recent tour throughout Florida by the NXT brand. So I'm in two nights back to back. Once in Miami, one in West Palm Beach, when he was being billed as just Manny Andrade. And was one of those guys who on a nightly basis helped steal the show. One of those guys who his matches, while at the outset didn't really do too much for you, by the end you wanted more. You wanted to see more. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, Andrade Almas used to wrestle under the name of La Sombra. So you can go back and look up his luchador days and see what he was capable of then. But now, without the mask, sort of a weird thing with a fedora and suspenders. But it is a talent that you want to keep an eye on for the future of NXT. And I thought, to kick off the show, had a fantastic match with Ty Dillinger that the hot crowd was into right out of the gate. The NXT crowd at Full Sail, they love themselves some Perfect 10. But Andrade Almas really, really carved out a spot for him within that audience, because he is incredibly fun to watch. His moonsault into a standing moonsault is it's going to get a high pop every single time. Every time. And there is something really strong there to build upon as he gets his feet wet, as he gets more comfortable within the NXT brand. That's a guy to watch. He gets it. He gets the showmanship of it. He gets the theatrics of it. That's babyface in the making at some point in time. So keep your eye on that. So scoring a win over Ty Dillinger, that's par for the course. But I thought the match that the two of them put on held my interest, entertained me throughout, and is definitely one that you might want to go back and watch at the beginning of TakeOver The End. A match that I don't think is going to get enough due when you look at the card from top to bottom, but a pretty stellar match in its own right. Now look, following that, you had the defense of the Tag Team Championships with American Alpha putting the belts on the line in a rematch from TakeOver Dallas against the Revival. I love both these teams. I really do. In an amazing fashion. I am a huge fan of the Revival. A huge fan. This is an old school tag team right up my alley. I mean, they go way back. This is an 80s style tag team of just guys who want to beat down their opponents. And I love watching them work. And American Alpha has really come into their own. Jason Jordan, since he's been paired with Chad Gable, was really coming into his own. Love this team. And I've seen them work once again with a recent NXT tour of Florida. I've seen them work together outside of their initial match at TakeOver Dallas. And I knew they were going to tear down the house at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Center for that WrestleMania weekend card. These two teams have amazing chemistry together. And these two teams are a budding rivalry. These two teams know how to make a tag match work. And so, having seen them work on numerous occasions, I was looking forward to this match. And I think, without a shadow of a doubt, that those four individuals paired up for this card stole the show at TakeOver the End. Just a truly incredible match. Once again. From four guys who just know how to piece together a tag team match and who have incredible chemistry together in doing so. Go back and watch that match. You watch the front end of the card, go back and watch that match. And this is why, once again, talking about sort of the momentum and the layout of TakeOver the last two times, it's hard to match such a high point. Because going back to TakeOver Dallas, the high point was Nakamura and Sami Zayn, and after that, it was really hard to follow. Here, the high point was really American Alpha versus the Revival, and it was incredibly hard to follow. Now, the Revival walk away with the Tag Team Championships, first two-time tag champions ever in NXT history, which is an achievement for them. That's a feather in their cap that they can ride out for a while. And there are rumblings of American Alpha being called up to the main roster, with Vince McMahon being incredibly impressed with the work that they've been doing down in NXT. I mean, they're basically modern-day Steiner brothers. The main roster tag division needs a boost anyway, so I'm happy and fine with them being called up. It looks like there's plenty of talent to fill out the NXT tag division, so I'm okay with that as well. But this sort of felt like a swan song for American Alpha in dropping the titles, even so soon after Dallas, for something bigger in their future, namely what's going to happen for them in the main roster. Now, the key for them as they head up to either Raw or SmackDown is being given time to do what they do. You can't have 4 and 5 minute tag matches. It's not going to work. The reason American Alpha works is that they are given time to make a tag match work, to get into the psychology of a tag match, to draw in fans into the tag match. So good luck to them if that's the way, the direction they're heading, onward and upward to the main roster. Happy to see the Revival back with the belts because I think they're amazing workers. And I'll be very curious to see what the next challenge is for them, even though it looks to already be built in with sort of Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa perhaps next in line, sneaking a victory heading into TakeOver. See, once again, storylines, they matter. Lay the groundwork 1 week, Pay it off down the line. Smart writing down in NXT right now. Now, I said earlier on that I had to take issue with Smarks, which I usually do anyway, but I'm going to take a special beef with them this week. As following the Revival's capturing of the tag titles, two unknown gentlemen came down to the ring and decimated American Alpha. Just decimated. Post-match attack, lay out Chad Gable, lay out Jason Jordan in dominating fashion, and announced their presence in NXT with authority. Now, these are the authors of Pain. I'm sure we'll get a formal introduction to them soon enough. And they are very different than what we've gotten in the tag division before in NXT. Remind me in certain ways like the Ascension, in the way that the Ascension just rolled through competition. But these are two menacing dudes. This isn't Victor, who's kind of smaller, and Connor's the big dude. No, these are two big dudes who we will learn more about. But the issue I take with Smarks is that Precious Paul Ellering, best known as the manager of the Road Warriors / Legion of Doom, emerges from the back up the rampway and is clearly the mastermind behind the authors of Pain. Clearly the mastermind behind this attack on American Alpha. A Hall of Famer, a WWE Hall of Famer. And those in attendance at TakeOver the End, those in attendance at Full Sail University, hit Paul Ellering with a "Who are you?" chant. Now, I'm willing to give some benefit of the doubt to a handful of fans who may just not know who Paul Ellering is. The WWE conveniently forgets its history until it wants to. And so, those who may be fresh to the product or fresh to NXT may not necessarily know who Paul Ellering is. May not be all that familiar with the Road Warriors or the Legion of Doom. They're not up on their wrestling history. Okay, I get it. The WWE, once again, does not always make it a point to point out its history. They'll tell you to go watch the network, but unless you really know what you're looking for, you wouldn't know who Paul Ellering is. But where I take issue is with the Smarks. The smart marks, the smart fans. The ones who think that they know everything. Who are usually the ones who make it a point to tell you how much they know, particularly in the venue of Full Sail. I've been there. I've seen them in action. They want to let you know how much they know, how smart they are, how hip they are, how in tune they are with wrestling. If you believe that everything is either a work or totally real, and for them to not know Paul Ellering further instills in me confidence to say the following. Smarks don't know shit. They think they do, but they don't. They know a lot in the moment because they go out of their way to make sure that they know it so that they could tell you how much they know. So that they could try and look down upon you if you don't know as much. They'll tell you all about this guy on the indies who, how dare you not know if you're a wrestling fan? Or this match in New Japan, who, how dare you not be familiar with if you're a wrestling fan? They want to know all the minor details now to try and prove their worth as a wrestling fan. And yet, when it comes to the history of professional wrestling, what's happened in the past, why certain things are the way they are, how different storylines and angles are cyclical, what laid the foundation for things to happen today, they know nothing. They don't know shit. Smarks are the worst of the worst. There's a reason that this show exists as intelligent wrestling conversation, and that is to be a podcast that speaks about wrestling intelligently and not with the asinine dumbness that smart fans constantly want to inject into the dialogue. And a "who are you" chant for Paul Ellering is exactly what I'm talking about. So for those fans who always claim to be like the smartest in the room, you're not. You're not the smartest in the room. You don't know shit. So rather than going out of your way to try and point out the things now that you think make you hip, maybe you should go back and take a wrestling history lesson. You know, back before the Attitude Era, and learn what wrestling is all about. Alright, there's my beef. I look forward to seeing what the Authors of Pain do. Paul Ellering, I think, is a great addition to help these guys develop. Gives them credibility right out of the gate for people who are familiar with who he is. And sets them up to be a dominating tag team, much in the way that the Road Warriors were at one point in time. All right, from there you had a pretty exciting match, pretty exciting setup between Shinsuke Nakamura and Austin Aries. Now, this was a match that people were very much looking forward to, but I think this match also suffered from its placement on the card, because it was a bit of a come down from American Alpha and the Rival. Doesn't mean that Nakamura and Aries didn't put on a hell of a match. They did. It just had the slot of following an outstanding tag match. Now, I'll tell you this. In short time, and because of, once again, smart marks wanting to know everything that's going on everywhere else, particularly in New Japan, Nakamura has come in like gangbusters in NXT. And I thought the storyline, however short-lived and short-fused it was between Aries and Nakamura, as Aries feeling sort of slighted, unappreciated with his timing of introduction into NXT because of someone like Nakamura also there, I thought it made for at least an interesting angle to go into the match with. An interesting reason for this match to even exist. I would like to watch this match again, maybe just isolated, see if it holds up on its own. But I thought, once again, the right call was made with Nakamura. He's strap a rocket to this dude. He's on the way up. Him and Samoa Joe, I am excited to see down the line. But at least here, Nakamura and Aries, I thought, put on a pretty sound match. And one that I'd like to revisit. Asuka and Nia Jax It sort of is what it is. I think Nia Jax is still incredibly green. I think she just needs to learn how to sell more. I realize that she's built to be a monster, but when she is being hit with strikes by Asuka, she's going to need to sell their effectiveness at some point. Otherwise, the match just sort of feels a little bit sloppy. I'm not into it. I got to think that something is taking effect, even if it's not till later in the match. So, makes sense for Asuka to sort of retain the belt. Bayley is sort of recovering from an ailment, needs a little bit of time off. She's been working her ass off. Clearly, the program is Asuka and a Bayley rematch, which I imagine will be Bayley's swan song and her send off towards the main roster. So Asuka taking out Nia Jax, perfectly fine with. I think the women's division is definitely in need of an injection of talent, because whether it's Peyton Royce or Alexa Bliss, who's been there for a while now, Carmella, who I think solo is missing something, Aaliyah is there now, who doesn't really do anything for me. I think right now you have Asuka and then you have everybody else, and they're going to need to figure out how to redevelop what was an incredibly hot women's division in order to build it around Asuka. Because right now it's Asuka and Bayley, and that's about it. So Asuka winning makes sense to me. Then the main event we had was Samoa Joe versus Finn Balor in the first ever NXT Steel Cage match for the NXT Championship. Now, been rumors for months about Finn Balor coming up to the main roster. When is that going to happen? I do not know, and I could not really tell you. I have no idea. Could it happen at Money in the Bank? Sure. Could it not happen until SummerSlam, maybe? It might be a stretch. He's coming at some point. He'll be there, I imagine, before the brand extension, the brand split. This being the end could clearly be him saying goodbye to NXT and moving onward. I thought the match was fine. I have seen, once again, these two gentlemen compete on house shows, and I think actually the house shows have been better than the TakeOver matches. We've seen it now 3 times at TakeOver. Once in London, once in Dallas, and now at the end. And when I saw them actually fight in Miami on Samoa Joe's birthday, I thought that was a better overall match than what I've seen in TakeOver. Doesn't mean that these matches are any less than. I just find it feels like something is being held back from the TakeOver matches. The London match I wasn't all that crazy about. The Dallas match, of course, had the unfortunate problem of Samoa Joe getting cut. And as a result, that match was never able to get into any real sort of flow. But this match was able to get into a bit better flow. Some really cool spots throughout. Makes sense for Samoa Joe to sort of have his run with the belt now, with Finn Balor most likely moving on. I was fine with the match, but once again, I felt like following such a high point earlier in the show, it was tough for anything else to capture my emotions like that tag match did. So I can't complain about the show. It's just hard for a card to stay at such a high level throughout after starting out so hot and peaking so soon. So overall, had fun watching NXT TakeOver. Had some issues with the network, particularly the app on my iPad. Had a lot of buffering issues, had a lot of syncing issues between video and audio. So that could have also played into some difficulty I had getting into the flow of TakeOver at the end. But by and large, look, the TakeOvers are always an experience to watch. I always enjoy watching them. Never have an issue with them. And for that, if you haven't seen it yet, by all means, go out of your way and watch NXT TakeOver the end, or the end is the beginning, or like I said, whatever the hell ultimately they decided to call this thing. Couple other things that I want to make note of. TNA had Slammiversary over the weekend. Nobody watched it. Nobody really cared. And then the follow-up, they had issues with Pop TV even getting the show to broadcast. Reports of major financial troubles nearly preventing the show from even happening in the 48 hours leading up to Slammiversary. Basically, magic had to be done in order to get that show up and on the air. It's just a sad state of affairs for TNA. There's a lot of talent there. I wish it wasn't in the place that it was, but it is. Bad management will always cripple bad talent. And just a sad note to know that even as TNA does what it can to keep wrestling fans talking about it, the Jeff Hardy, Matt Hardy storyline recently was a prime example, for better and for worse. Company just can't seem to catch a break. So that is what it is. Also, going back to what the WWE is working on, 32 participants in the Cruiserweight Classic have been confirmed. I have not confirmed my attendance yet, but it is very likely I will be there for at least the first round of tapings. Some really interesting names in the mix that I think Smarks would know, because they made it a point to know. But if you're just a casual viewer of the WWE Network and you float around and you watch what looks interesting to you, there's going to be a lot of incredible talent in the Cruiserweight Classic that I think people have not been exposed to yet, and I look forward to them checking out. Kota Ibushi part of this, Zack Sabre Jr. part of this. And you have somebody old school like Tajiri part of this. Very cool addition. I also think guys like Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa are going to get the benefit of competing in the Cruiserweight Classic, because while they are seen in the NXT light, and once again, smart fans at Full Sail know who they are, there are a lot of people who don't get what they're all about. And I think seeing Johnny Gargano or seeing Tommaso Ciampa, who will benefit from competing in matches with similar talent, other athletic cruiserweight talent, that may help elevate them to another level. So 32 participants. I'm not going to run them all down. You can find them online, www.com. You can get the whole list and sort of get some background on who a lot of these guys are. But a pretty interesting layout period for the Cruiserweight Classic, and I look forward to checking these things out as it unfolds in the later stages of the summer. Speaking of the brand split, which we've touched upon periodically throughout this show, there are rumors of 2 pay-per-views per month or 2 special events per month with the brand split. One that would be geared towards Raw, one that would be geared towards SmackDown, and I guess that would be the way that they make this work. In the past, when they had the brand extension, they alternated months. It looks like here they may just both inhabit a month, which is a lot of wrestling to demand of people to watch. Good luck to them doing it. But once again, if you're going to do that, you better make sure you have compelling programming week in and week out on Raw and SmackDown. And so far, filling 3 hours out of Raw has been a chore. Now, granted, they got pay-per-views all the time. But I just hope there's enough storyline to go around on the other side, which, granted, they're going to have their own writing staff, and they're going to have their own distinct roster of talent. With 2 pay-per-views, 2 special events per month, One for each brand. It's a tall order. Ambitious. We'll see if that winds up working out. All right, I also want to touch upon one other thing that WWE has put out in recent days. They did one of their top 10 lists, and they had the best catchphrase of the decade. The best catchphrase of the decade. What was the best catchphrase of the decade? And as you rack your brain thinking of what could it possibly be, I'm going to tell you what made the top of the list. Which feeds right into the hatred for Roman Reigns. Is because Roman Reigns, I'm not a good guy, I'm not a bad guy, I am the guy catchphrase sat at the top of the list. Now, I looked at the rest of the list, and I'll run it down for you, because it also posed a problem to me, which may also speak to why the WWE is where it is right now, which is kind of in a downturn. Number 2 was Stephanie and Triple H's Best for Business. Number 3 was The Miz's Because I'm The Miz and I'm Awesome. Number 4 were the Wyatt family's Follow the Buzzards. Number 5 were Enzo and Big Kaz's Soft. Number 6 was the New Day's Bootios. They make sure that you ain't booty. Number 7 was Wade Barrett's I'm Afraid I've Got Some Bad News For You. Number 8 was Bo Dallas's All You Have to Do Is Bo Leave. Number 9 was Jack Swagger's We the People. Number 10 was Zack Ryder's Woo 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 You Know It. Now I looked at this 10, and I said, number 1, this is why people hate Roman Reigns, is because that catchphrase sucks. It's only been around for like 3 weeks. How could it be the catchphrase of the decade? But then I looked at the other 9 that made the list, and I said, Jesus Christ, we really haven't had a good catchphrase in a while, have we? And the answer is no, clearly not. There are no if you smell what the Rock is cookins. There are no that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so. There are no I got 2 words for you, suck it. There's nothing. There's no it's true, it's damn true. There's nothing here on this list that when somebody says it, when it comes out of their mouth, the fans immediately rise to their feet in excitement. There is nothing here that would pop a crowd. There's nothing here that's interactive for a crowd to get excited about or chant along with. There is nothing here to get you pumped for what you're going to see, to feel a part of the show. Catchphrases are a big part of getting talent over. And the fact that they have none, the fact that they can't pull up even 2 over the last decade that I would look at and be like, yeah, that's a good one. That's an all-timer. Means what they're doing isn't working. Because for Roman Reigns' I Am The Guy, which is like 3 weeks old since, or maybe a little longer, since WrestleMania, that's how long it is, and automatically it's catapulted to the top. Number 1, makes fans hate that guy even more. Because it's clearly not the best. And number 2, it just really shines light on how weak the creative is on the product. Not just now, but in recent history. That I can't point to catchphrases and say, man, that's a hell of one. There's something to keep in mind. All right, Money in the Bank is this week. This weekend coming up. I will be watching it on Father's Day somehow as I get ready to travel again. Next week, we'll be back to break down the show in its entirety. But what I wanted to do, at least closing out the show as we do in typical fashion, is make my predictions for the show and see ultimately how I score this thing out. We'll go to the pre-show. Starting it off, we have Dolph Ziggler versus Baron Corbin again in the pre-show. It's got to be Baron Corbin. The reason Dolph Ziggler is in this thing is to help make Baron Corbin. So it's got to be Baron Corbin winning this match. On the flip side, Apollo Crews squares off against Sheamus. So between those two matches, you already know what they think of some of the NXT talent they called up. They can't even make it onto the main show. But Sheamus isn't really going anywhere. Apollo Crews could use a win to help get him on the map. So I'm going with the two NXT guys in the pre-show. I like Apollo Crews over Sheamus, and I like Baron Corbin over Dolph Ziggler. Move on up to the U.S. title on the main show. Rusev defending the United States Championship against Titus O'Neil. Rusev really needs the heat, and the only way he's going to get it is by winning matches, and that's how they're going to make the U.S. title mean something again. Titus O'Neil back from suspension as of late and is once again trying to pick up some of the momentum they had going with him before they sent him away. But Rusev, you need that heel guy carrying that belt to make it mean something, and you need to have him carrying it for a while. So I like Rusev keeping the title with Titus O'Neil going down in defeat. Women's tag team match, Charlotte and Dana Brooke versus Natalya and Becky Lynch. There's something brewing there between Charlotte and Dana Brooke. Some kind of split is bound to happen. And Natalya and Becky Lynch seem to be chipping away at Charlotte a little bit, but I think Charlotte ultimately, even if she has to do this by herself, is going to come out with the victory. And for that, I like her side to have their hands raised high at Money in the Bank. Fatal 4-way tag team match between the Vaudevillains, the New Day, Enzo and Big Cass, and Gallows and Anderson. This is a tough one because you can go a number of different ways. New Day has held the belt for quite some time, and at some point they need those belts taken off. I'd like Gallows and Anderson to really start their rise by having the titles, and that's how they get heat on themselves. However, I don't like the setting. I don't like the Fatal 4-way setting here, because unless they are going to pin the New Day and have the title change mean something, I think it opens up too many doors of excuses for them to win the belts without defeating the champions. I think it's a convenient way. I also think it's a cop-out way. So while I do think the time is coming for Gallows and Anderson, I think in this setting, for right now, maybe the New Day retains. One-on-one, John Cena versus AJ Styles in this quote-unquote dream match. I know everybody's looking at this and they're saying, oh, they're going to bury AJ Styles. That's what the smart marks are always got to say. Oh, John Cena's going to bury AJ Styles. AJ Styles is going to win this match. They have a lot going with AJ Styles right now, and John Cena doesn't need a win. AJ Styles is on the way up in the WWE. AJ Styles is going to get a big win. AJ Styles is going to win this program with John Cena. This isn't going to be the first and only match. I mean, it's going to be the first. It's not going to be the only match they have. But when their series is done, and you count up the wins and losses, AJ Styles will walk away with this with more wins than John Cena does. You bet on that. All right, the Money in the Bank match. You have Sami Zayn versus Dean Ambrose versus Chris Jericho versus Cesaro versus Kevin Owens versus Alberto Del Rio. Who walks away with this? Obviously, they've been laying the seeds now for Dean Ambrose to come away with that, setting up something with the Shields. Possible three-way. Maybe he wins and he cashes in on whoever comes away from the main event with that title. But I don't think it's going to happen that way. I like Kevin Owens to get this briefcase. I like Kevin Owens to hold on to this. I like Kevin Owens to brag and threaten that he's going to cash this in at any time. And one day down the line, before the year is up, I like Kevin Owens to be a champion in the WWE. I like Kevin Owens to win the Money in the Bank match and be the new Mr. Money in the Bank. So there you have that. And in the main event, Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. We could be looking at a double turn. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like this belt isn't coming off Roman Reigns just yet, though. I know Seth Rollins came back. I know it feels like a waste to have him come back only to lose that first match against Roman Reigns. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some type of swerve that goes on here to help lead them into the brand split. I wouldn't be surprised if we have something here that allows them to both once again lay claim to being the champion. Or if I had to pick one guy coming out of this, it's going to be the one who claims to be the guy. Because I don't think they're willing to check out on this guy so soon. I think Roman Reigns retains and stays your WWE World Heavyweight Champion. All right, I'll be back next week on the show to break down the Money in the Bank card from top to bottom, see if it turned out the way I booked it. Also, just to see if I know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to those matches. In the meantime, I'm going to send you on your way, but let me get those plugs in at the end. Make sure you follow us on social media. On Twitter, you can follow me. You can follow this particular show at the IWC Show. The IWC Show on Twitter. That'll let you know every time we get a new show that goes up, as well as at Tis Infamous. That's for the mothership. This is Infamous, which is now back online. So check us out at thisisinfamous.com for all the content we always have going for you. At Tis Infamous, and you follow me at Infamous Kid for all my random ramblings and musings, my stream of consciousness that I just pour out onto my Twitter feed at Infamous Kid, 2Ds at the end. Make sure you follow all of those 3 accounts on your Twitter. Over on Facebook, facebook.com/tisinfamous and facebook.com/bullythekid. Those are the 2 that we want you to like. Those are the 2 we want you to follow. Those are the 2 we want you to participate in, whether it comes to our threads, our discussions, the notifications and content that go up there regularly. Be a part of us on Facebook. Like those 2 pages. Once again, facebook.com/tisinfamous and facebook.com/bullythekid. Look, podcast, you can find it all over the place right now. We got it everywhere. You want to find it on SoundCloud? Get it on the SoundCloud app. iTunes, get it there. Google Play, get it there. Stitcher, get it there. Blueberry, get it there. Anywhere that you think that has the podcast, you can get it. It's now up there for the taking. You can also find that at thisisinfamous.com. But the podcast is everywhere. Check out your preferred podcast distribution model, and I guarantee you will find Intelligent Wrestling Conversation there. So by all means, get out there and get it. And if there's something that I'm missing, something that we don't have it on, you make sure you send me an email, theiwcshow@gmail.com, or if you have any comments or feedback on the show, theiwcshow@gmail.com. You can find my work on a regular basis at joeblow.com, as well as This Is Infamous. I have been your host, Billy Donnelly. This has been Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, episode number 3. Enjoy Money in the Bank. I'll be back next week after I get settled in for my travels. We'll talk that show, and we'll meet up again. Keep it smart. Keep it in the ring. Have yourself a pleasant immediate future. I'm out for now. Peace. Intelligent Wrestling Conversation, episode number 3, has been a podcast presentation of This Is